Mr. Stoll just said, my name is Melynie, and I don't actually exist yet. Don't worry, it's okay. You probably don't exist either, and you probably don't even know it. See, right now we're all still questions. What are your grades like? Where do you want to go to school? What do you want to study? Where do you want to move later on down the line? What do you want to be when you grow up? How many years until you become something? How long until you die? Now that I've got you thinking, let me introduce myself one more time. My name is Melynie Koch, spelled K-O-C-H, and I'm a senior here at the high school. I'm standing before you today because I talk about mental illness and identity a lot, and someone must have happened to overhear me and resonate with something I said, which is a good enough reason for me to keep talking. So without further ado, I want everyone to close your eyes and think of some things that you know to be true about yourself. Really close them and really think. Think about your personality, your demeanor, and how you see yourself. Think about who you are right now and not who you want to be in the future. Be honest with yourself. You don't have to share. Got it? So here are some things that I know to be true about myself. I'm 18 years old, but most of the time I really only feel 15. I'm bisexual, a really bad Wiccan, a vegetarian, mentally ill, psychotic, and terrified of the future. I love coloring books, Dungeons and Dragons, poetry, tarot cards, my friends, and my service dog in training, Red, who himself is a little bit of a manifestation of some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. I'm not sure I'm anything like the person that I want to be honest, and I'm a little scared of what I am if that's true. I'm scared of a lot of things. It's just kind of the person that I am. It took me a really, really long time to figure these things out. 18 years actually, and counting, because I guess the most important thing that I know about myself is that I don't really know myself. And how is that even possible? I'm glad you asked, imaginary other half of this conversation. It goes like this. I was brought up by a society that praises preparedness. This isn't inherently a bad thing. It's entirely possible to get lost in yourself if you're not careful, but it's a threat to identity. And what does that mean? Think of it this way. When was the last time you stopped and smelled the metaphorical roses? When was the last time you did something without worrying what other people would think? When was the last time you really, unabashedly felt something? I'm going to use myself as an anecdote because I love talking about myself and I love oversharing, but also because I remember what I was like before I decided I was going to be somebody. I grew up in a loving home with parents who did their best and a little sister who harassed me constantly. A regular family. We went on vacations, we ate at the dinner table, and we loved to torment each other. But despite all this, my life was never that perfect. In fact, it was a little bit far from it. I realized I was gay the same year that I was diagnosed with major depression, and these two things would follow me through the rest of my life up to this point. I'm going to talk about the gay thing first because that's the thing I listed first a second ago, and I've got to keep organized up here somehow. When I realized I didn't just like boys, I was mortified. I was terrified down to my bones of what that meant, and I didn't tell a soul. I was in 7th grade at the time, and I just sort of pushed it down inside of me and pretended it didn't exist. I didn't want to believe it. A year later, and I was dating a girl in secret, or at least as close to dating as you can get when you're in 8th grade. Not too much time after that, and I was coming out to my mom, and I was terrified. It's not like I thought she was going to disown me or hate me or anything like that. In truth, I'm not entirely sure what I thought, but I was scared, and after she frowned at me and asked me, well, what does that even mean, I decided to keep it to myself a little while longer. It wasn't until I got into high school and surrounded myself with so many beautiful and different people that I decided I liked being gay. In fact, I loved it. I even went so far as to internalize it and make it such a huge part of my identity that for a while, that's all I was. You know that stereotype about vegans constantly telling people they're a vegan? It's kind of like that. I even made a huge coming out post on Facebook on which my mom commented something to the effect of, "I just want you to be happy being Melynie." This didn't mean very much to me at the time. I was so enraptured with my fabulous gayness that it just seemed like more good reception. I was so enraptured in my fabulous gayness that not very much of anything meant anything to me if it didn't have to do with being gay. The same thing happened the many different times I was diagnosed and misdiagnosed with a mental illness, the first time again in 7th grade. I had gotten into a nasty habit of self-harm, which went on for several months before I left a note in my mom's purse asking her for help. She was angry at first, which meant that she was afraid. I was too. She had me evaluated by a therapist, the first of many, and I was diagnosed with major depression, given a prescription for Zoloft, and sent on my way. This was both a blessing and a curse. It felt nice to have a name to put to my suffering, and it felt good that that there were people that wanted to help me, but before I knew it, the only thing that mattered to me as much as being gay was being mentally ill. Being so obsessed with the two things, I never learned very much about myself at all, and as I'm speaking, I realize that I may have even been trying to become the self-fulfilling prophecy of my own thesis. I wanted to be something so bad I would take whatever I could get, but I digress. At this point in my life, I have been diagnosed with major depression, panic disorder, agoraphobia, obsessive-compulsive disorder, ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, dissociative disorder not otherwise specified, and the one that finally stuck, bipolar disorder 1 with psychosis, about a year and some change ago. Of course, history is doomed to repeat itself, and I found myself becoming more enraptured with every new diagnosis. I wanted something to be. I wanted something to call myself, so I needed labels, and I internalized those labels, and pretty soon I became so much of a hodgepodge of a mess that I didn't even know where I began and where I ended. I stole personality traits and mannerisms from my friends and my favorite characters, and before I knew it, I couldn't even tell who I was anymore. And the question, or the comment that my mom had made, and over the years had become a question, often rang out in my head. Why can't you just be happy being Melynie? This means a lot more to me now than it did when I was a kid. I think she meant it, and in a way still means it, in a way that says, why do you have to be so gay? Why do you have to be so mentally ill? Why is that such a huge part of your identity? And at first I took offense to this. I can't say that I was happy, what with the years of poorly treated emotional turmoil and all, but I was content. I had that something to be. I had that something to call myself. But my mom and the rest of the world still asked me why I couldn't be happy just being me. Because of this, I started to resent the identity that I'd created. I did a 180-degree flip from being completely enraptured with myself to distancing myself from myself as much as possible. The question, who are you, became, what are you going to be someday? And that, right there, is the dangerous switch I want everyone to avoid. See, now I've embraced it. Because the thing is, I am happy just being Melynie. I'm happy just being myself. Myself is gay, and myself is mentally ill, and she's spiritual, and she's beautiful, and I love her. And you're probably wondering what all this matters and why I just stood up here for this long and talked about myself. The point of it all is, it took me 18 years to figure out that I was allowed to be something now without worrying about what I was going to be in the future. I'm allowed to be gay and care about gay issues, and I'm allowed to acknowledge my psychological limitations, and, for example, the fact that a service dog to mitigate them might be a good idea, something that took me a long time to come to terms with. I'm allowed to invest emotionally in my friends and my TV shows, perform at poetry slams, believe in magic, and be a kid. What I'm trying to say is I'm allowed to do these things despite the fact and because of the fact that I'm probably going to be a different person a few years down the line, and so are you. Everybody in this room, young and old, has the potential to be something so great right now. I promise I'm not blowing smoke. You have the potential to get lost in that too. That happened to me, and it's not what I want. You've got to find a balance between existence and preparedness. You've got to know you're allowed to be something now, despite of what you're probably going to be later. That is my thesis right there. People change, and you only had to listen to me talk this long for it. So that being said, I'd like to close this out with what us slam poets like to call an open letter. Dear parents, sit down. Dear school board, shut up. Dear Congress, laissez-faire. Dear Generation Z, stand up and walk out of here and be something. Dye your hair, see a therapist, take selfies, go to Pride, become a pagan, gauge your ears, take women's studies, wear makeup, be a narcissist, be a nihilist, be a liberal, be everything you have been trained to reject by every standardized educational facility and government office you have ever set foot in. Be a part of this world right now before you're 18 years old or 70 years old and you realize that you were only ever fragments of what you thought you were supposed to be. You might get lost, and that's okay, but please, do something, be something, right now, before you lose the chance. Sincerely, Melynie Koch, human being. Thank you very much.